I'm walking along a permissive path through a lovely orchard. I haven't been here that long, actually, this orchard. I remember when it was planted, and then a strange old vicar owned it, and someone chucked a load of rubble up here at one time when I was a parish councillor. There was a big fuss about that. There's always a fuss in this parish about something. At the moment it's going to be that the guy who owns that forest there, he's chopping it down, and just around the corner they've already chopped a large area of forest down, and the old mineral line, the historic railway line, runs up through there, and people have been walking up and down it ever since it ceased to be a railway, and the rails were taken up and used for various purposes. In fact, I know several gateways and fences in this valley that are made out of the old rails. Anyway, people have been using the trackway, the old track bed, as a path, as a bridleway, even as a rup, a sort of road, well, for 50, 60, 70 years on a daily permanent basis. So I know there's going to be a terrible fight there when and if that landowner attempts to close it all down. And so what I'm doing now is just coming up to a little lane called Leland Lane, which runs eventually into that valley there. And when it does, it goes under the old Mineral Line railway bridge, and it climbs that hill and becomes Willie's Lane. And Willie's Lane is overgrown and long forgotten. And there's an airliner. That's the first I've heard in a very long time. It's coming into Bristol Airport. 737 Ryanair, I can see through the clouds, and that's rare now. We used to get 4 or 5 an hour at one time, because we're right under the Bristol and the Cardiff flight paths. But because of the COVID pandemic, airliners have become a rare thing, and we're used to the silence. We're used to that loud roaring noise. Funny, isn't it? You get used to anything. You get used to the silence, and you get used to the roaring noise, conversely. And I miss getting on board those things. And I know you shouldn't really, wrecking the planet and all that. Anyway, I was telling you about the lane, and Willie's Lane goes up there. And it's sort of been abandoned by the Highways Authority, which is a sort of shame, really, because about 50 years ago, a guy who lived in this valley called John Stonewall Stoneman became a parish councillor at one time, and then he was evicted from his little cottage, and he sort of fell out with society, and he lived in a wood just over there, the other side of the hamlet. And he would do anything he could to become a thorn in the side of the local community, which included the fact that he discovered that Willie's Lane was a lane. Well, at that point, it was just a long, thick, wide hedgerow, but it had been used as a thoroughfare years ago, and he discovered there was a historic right of way, and he took the county council to court and won a famous court battle in the High Court in London, and made them open it. My father reported on that at the time. It was in all the papers, because it cost them £500,000. They reckon it cost them the same price as half a mile of motorway to open it. It took such a lot of work. And then he used it out of principle. And a wonderful old GP called Dr. Hardman, who lived at Leland, he used it to go on his rounds. Very useful. A few other people from Leland, a few other people from down here at Pitt Mill would use it, and no one else. And then in recent years, the Highways Authority have given up on it. So it's all derelict and overgrown. Again, John Stonewall Stoneman would be turning in his grave. But there it is. That's the sort of valley we live in. In fact, this valley has had quite a record in eccentrics living here. And they reckon there was a reason for that. My old friend Randolph Pretty always said there was a reason for that, because it was basically a mining community when it was sort of set up. It was, before that, it was an empty valley with a few farmhouses and cottages. Then the iron miners came, the iron mines set up, lots of cottages were built, and then the miners went. And then what happened after that was the cottages went cheap. Roadwater was the cheapest village to buy a house anywhere in West Somerset. And so what often happens in that situation is the more eccentric and bohemian arty types, sort of idiots like me really, end up buying their cheap houses and living cheap by jowl and being eccentric and all the rest of it. And that is indeed what happened in the community of Roadwater. Now, I know that to be true. There will be people there today who will say, well, that's a load of old rubbish. But I'm talking quite a long time ago. But there is a thread of eccentricity which remains. Some people would say that that I'm a bit of an ambassador of that, but whatever. That's how it is. Dear old Roadwater Valley. About 10 years ago, I used to do a lot of TV presenting for ITV West Country. And then I got ill in a jungle, got some dreadful bacteria, went to live in my heart. And then I got better and started to do TV presenting again. And we were working on a series called Icons of the West Country. And the reason I'm telling you this is because when I recovered, after 10 weeks, I was in hospital, goodness knows what else. When I recovered, this is the first place we came to film, because the icon of the West Country we wanted to film was hedgerows. And you can see this lane has got these deep, deep hedges and this wonderful, wonderful oak tree. Fabulous, really great tree. I mean, that tree is at least 400 years old. Been there a long time. And so, this is where we came. And once I had done the piece to camera and written the article for the paper and done the voiceover for the TV series, I sort of knew I was back. I was better again. I recovered and I got on with my life. So that's a happy place for me.